Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. I am a 36-year-old Special Forces member who has been on 3 deployments. These missions have often taken me away from home for months at a time, and I got married 12 years ago at the age of 24. There are 6 of us in my unit, and we've been through a lot of tough times together. Whenever we're back in the States, we try to get together for a barbecue every month. It allows us to stay in touch and relax. Just 3 days ago, we had another one of those parties. My teammates and I went to a friend's house, while our wives had their own party at my house. We all live in the same neighborhood near the military base. During the party, we realized that we had run out of beer, so I volunteered to go home and get some. I crossed the street and made a long detour to the shed to get some beer. As I was about to enter through the back door behind the kitchen, I heard them laughing and whispering. I couldn't help but listen in, and to my horror I realized that they were talking about their affair. They discussed whether their lovers were handsome, compared intimate details, and even shared tips on how to date and keep secrets. It was like being punched in the face so hard. I felt like I was going to stop breathing. I had been through many tough times in my military career, including being shot 3 times, but nothing could have prepared me for such a blow. It was as if I had been struck by lightning, and my whole body stiffened. In military training, we are taught to control our emotions and remain calm and rational in the face of adversity. That training kicked in and I forced myself to hit the switch. I managed to keep my emotions in check and didn't rush in to confront them. I grabbed a beer and went back to my friend's place, but inside I was in turmoil. My comrades noticed my unusual behavior, but I didn't say anything. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. I kept replaying the conversations I had heard in my head, trying to understand how it had happened. What was wrong with our marriage? Was I ignoring any important signals? How long had this betrayal been going on? Countless questions swirled in my head, but I couldn't find any answers. The next morning, I contacted my commander and told him what had happened. He sighed deeply, as if he had been through something similar. He assured me that he fully understood my situation and promised to give us a vacation so that we could have time to organize our lives. In addition to his support, he gave me the contact information for a law firm that is well known for handling these types of cases. In my state, you can legally record anything as long as you have permission from the homeowner or car owner. As a homeowner, I've had surveillance systems installed in my home and car before, mainly for burglary or insurance fraud. However, I never really scrutinized the recordings, and the old ones were simply overwritten by the new ones. Given the urgency of the matter, I replaced 4 2TB hard drives in my home and 1 2TB hard drive in my car to preserve as much evidence as possible. Next, I needed to gather my comrades at a friend's house. We locked the doors and put all the guns away. I had to tell them everything, including the recording of our wife's party. The next few hours were very difficult. At first it was shock and disbelief. I witnessed the kind of heartbreaking emotions you might only see on a battlefield, those hardened warriors showing vulnerability, and it was excruciatingly painful. And then there was the anger, which was even harder to control. My single friend, and I had to restrain the others to keep things from getting out of hand. When the anger subsided a bit, a deep despair gripped us. My comrades began to share some of the red flags they had noticed before, but had chosen to ignore, thinking it couldn't happen to them. They had thought their marriages were unbreakable, but now everything was falling apart. They began to put the pieces of the betrayal and deception together to try to understand the whole picture. The story I heard the other day was truly chilling. A friend of mine, who has a 6-year-old son, shared his deepest fear, his suspicion that his son might not be his own. This terrifying thought shocked all of us. At that moment, the only thing we had was each other. Like on a battlefield, we leaned on each other for support and solidarity, just as we always had. A friend of mine went down to the basement and got a case of really good wine, which we both needed to numb ourselves that day. We got so drunk that we eventually passed out. The next morning, we woke up, made breakfast, and took some pills to ease the hangover. Then I saw something change in my comrades. It was like a switch was flipped, and all the expression was gone from their faces. We were once again in that state of combat when surrounded by enemy troops, calm, focused, determined. We got together and started making plans. I proposed a complete reckoning with those who had hurt us so deeply. To my relief, they all immediately agreed that this was the best course of action for us. Thus, our battle plan began to take shape. Our plan of action quickly took shape. First, we decided that we were going to pretend it was business as usual and operate in secret. We were to collect all data storage devices from our homes and replace them discreetly. Two of us are responsible for scrutinizing all the data and analyzing it in detail at a friend's house. We also plan to surreptitiously obtain our wives' laptops and cell phones and install spyware on them. We're going to get tracking data from tracking companies for the past year, as well as collect bank statements and credit card bills. Next, we contacted that law firm and explained our situation to them in detail, inquiring about how this would affect our pension and other legal aspects. We quickly met with an attorney and hired them to prepare the necessary legal documents for us. Two of us were charged with tracking down and locating our misbehaving wives and asking them for information about the people they were having extramarital affairs with. Eventually, we began to work out how to solve the problem once and for all, without causing harm to ourselves. This was our battle plan, and we were determined to carry it out as resolutely as we would on the battlefield. We began to seek help online and conduct extensive research, especially on how to deal with spouses who misbehave and their possible responses, such as cold shoulder, blame shifting, and excuse-making. We compiled a detailed report on these possible reactions and developed our own prepared responses. We worked diligently to organize all the evidence we gathered into a detailed information bomb to be used when the time came. Our next step was to secretly and quickly separate our finances. Prior to the confrontation, we developed an ambush strategy, prepared to launch an explosion of destruction, and then observe the consequences. Our goal was to cut off contact with the misbehaving wives as soon as the explosion of destruction began, and then to engage in psychotherapy to deal with the emotional trauma. We vacated an empty room at a friend's house to serve as our frontline base of operations and got to work. We contacted our legal team and shared all the data we had gathered. They assured us that the evidence was overwhelming and asked if we wanted a peaceful and amicable divorce or a scorched earth policy. Considering the betrayal we had experienced, we did not hesitate to choose the latter. Fortunately, our houses are private property that we own outright and were acquired prior to our marriage, so they are not a significant issue in the divorce. We filed for divorce on charges of adultery, and our retirement funds and pensions were protected as a result. On the advice of our attorney, we decided to transfer 50% of all shared accounts to our personal accounts before serving them with divorce papers. We also explored the possibility of collecting evidence of the objects of their extramarital affairs with a view to prosecuting them for alienation of affection. Our attorneys are experienced, ruthless sharks who we trust to handle our case effectively. My attorney had seen this type of case before, especially in military marriages. She explained that this is common among military spouses and, unfortunately, very prevalent. What struck me was that she shared that she herself had been the victim of an extramarital affair and had no mercy on those who cheated on her. It was clear that she truly understood what we were going through. In just 1 week, they managed to prepare all the necessary divorce documents. They worked quickly and efficiently. My attorney also warned us that if we decided to completely disclose our misbehaving wives, including to their workplaces, they would most likely lose their jobs, and we would have to pay them temporary alimony until they were able to find work. It was a difficult decision, but we were willing to live with the consequences. Due to the presence of a military checkpoint near the base, we requested data through the commander about specific vehicles and individuals who were suspected of being the subject of extramarital affairs. He has been very supportive of us throughout this process. We then correlated all the data collected by the GPS trackers in our wives' cars to analyze the frequency and dates of visits by the extramarital affair subjects, as well as video and audio evidence from our houses and vehicles. This enabled us to determine the true identity of all the extramarital affair subjects. In the process, I learned that my soon-to-be ex-wife had 3 extramarital affairs during our marriage. Seeing what they were doing in our marital home left me psychologically tortured and feeling like I had fallen into a black hole with no hope of ever being able to return. It was a devastating experience that made me question everything. Despite all this chaos, we still found solace in each other. Whenever one of us fell into depression, the others rushed to their aid. Our bond as comrades in arms kept us afloat in this sea of despair. Once we found out who the affair partners were, where they lived, and what they were doing, we hired private investigators to look more deeply into their backgrounds. Shockingly, all the affair subjects were co-workers of the wives. I've been in a state of emotional numbness these days. Every smile, every laugh is fake. Every time I hear her say, "I love you," to me, I cringe. Every time she tried to call, I had to endure it because being too close to her was like having a storm in my head. It's a terrible situation because despite everything, I still love her. But I know I need to find a way to get past these emotions. I have received so much support and kindness during this difficult time. It is very encouraging to know that there are people in the world who have gone through similar situations and have kept their dignity. Many people reached out to me to give me strength and solidarity. We continue to fight and prepare for the coming storm. 2 days ago, it all finally unfolded for all 6 of us, each with a different experience. As for me, my experience was not dramatic, perhaps because I took a different approach. 3 days before taking action, I called my mom and told her I was going to visit her and that we would also visit my soon-to-be ex-wife's parents. They lived in the same neighborhood, 4 hours away from us. Whenever I came back to the States, we would go to their place for a few days. Both sets of parents are very traditional, very religious and conservative, but they also love us and treat us well. Before we executed our plan, we contacted other betrayed spouses for advice. Initially, the idea was to file divorce papers that day simultaneously with our misbehaving wives and the objects of their extramarital affairs. However, we realized that this approach could be very dangerous. Even if only one of the betrayed spouses had investigated the activities of our misbehaving wives, it would have alerted them and given them time to invent excuses and strategies to counter our actions. We needed to take a surprise approach to ensure that our misbehaving wives would not be aware of our plans. We decided to add 3 other betrayed spouses to the mix to strengthen our hand. During this time, I noticed that my soon-to-be ex-wife's behavior was becoming more and more suspicious. She became more attentive, flirtatious, clingy, and romantic, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she seemed to have sensed something. I had to keep up the pretense and respond to her overtures, even though my heart was already cut off from her. It's amazing how difficult it is to lie to someone you love, and she seemed to do it with ease. We turned to some other friends, distributed the collected data to them, and contacted the remaining betrayed spouses, as well as the parents of our misbehaving wives. On the day of the confrontation, we created a WhatsApp group to coordinate all the necessary actions. The day before the planned confrontation, I took my soon-to-be ex-wife to a friend's house, about 3 miles from there, and received a fake phone call from my friend. I told her to wait for me there for a while, that I had to meet the commander about something and would be back in a couple hours. I suggested she go hang out with her friends. Then I rushed home where another friend was waiting for me in a pickup truck. I had already organized and packed all of my soon-to-be ex-wife's belongings, clothes, electronics, etc., into pre-prepared boxes. I got everything into the truck as quickly as possible. About 2 hours later, I was done. I went back to my friend's house to pick up my soon-to-be ex-wife and gave my friend a thumbs up that everything was ready for the next move. I drove my car with my soon-to-be ex-wife in the passenger seat and my friend in the truck, following us behind, keeping about an hour's drive. We arrived at her parents' house around 3 p.m. and my mom joined us around 5 p.m. We greeted them, made small talk, and played with her sister's kids. Meanwhile, my friend waited in a nearby restaurant, waiting for my signal. At 9 p.m., we had a delicious dinner together and everyone was chatting. I sent my friend a thumbs-up emoji and then stood up and announced that I had an important thing to say. I asked my ex-wife's sister to take the kids upstairs, and then I asked everyone to sit down and be quiet until I was finished. My soon-to-be ex-wife became visibly anxious at this point, and I'm sure she sensed what was about to happen. But by then I had made up my mind. I calmed myself, took a deep breath, and began to tell them everything. I told them about my soon-to-be ex-wife's affair and showed them all the evidence I had gathered. I encouraged them to verify it if they had any doubts. The room was silent, and no one knew how to react. I went on to say that I had voice recordings, text message chains, emails, videos, and photos in my possession. I also had information on all of the affair partners, who they were, where they worked, where they lived, who their other betrayed spouses were, and what they had done. I even have all of this information printed out and in a file folder that is readily accessible if anyone wants to review and confirm it. By this time, my soon-to-be ex-wife had shrunk 3 sizes, her face filled with shock and horror. The truth had come out, and the consequences of her behavior were becoming more and more apparent. I continued to talk about the situation, making it clear that I could not and would not continue the relationship without a foundation of trust, respect, and love. My soon-to-be ex-wife's behavior has thoroughly proven that she can't provide that. I filed divorce papers. She began to mumble and plead, "No, please, no." I assured her that I had not disclosed her situation to our mutual friends or her workplace, but I warned her not to make up falsehoods about our situation because I had the evidence to tell the truth. I explained that my house was entirely in my name and had been bought before the marriage, that our finances had been kept separate, and that because of the nature of our work, I had taken half of our money out of any shared accounts. I also stated that she does not need spousal support or alimony due to the fact that she has a good job. I expressed my desire to be able to resolve this outside of court. I then suggested that she email me and explain which furniture she wanted, and that I would be willing to split it with her. I told her that I had packed all of her clothes and belongings from my house, and that they were now loaded in the truck and waiting outside for her to pick them up. As I spoke, I could no longer control my tears, and a few rolled down my cheeks. I was silent, and the room remained silent, as if everyone was frozen. My soon-to-be ex-wife had been crying and wailing. I closed my eyes and stood there, not saying a word. My ex-wife's sister intervened and took my soon-to-be ex-wife to another room. Meanwhile, my mom came up to me, hugged me, and gave me support in one of the darkest moments of my life. I walked up to my in-laws and softly said, "I'm sorry I couldn't protect your daughter." My father-in-law stood up and hugged me while my mother-in-law burst into tears. My father-in-law held my hand and comforted me by saying, "I know you did the best you could. Please stay in touch with us for at least a little while." I whispered a promise and left with my mom. When we got back, my friend was already unloading on the porch in front of their house. I helped him along with the unloading, and when I was done, I looked back at the house and my father-in-law was standing in the doorway. I told him to email me if anything was missing or if my soon-to-be ex-wife needed anything. He obliged. Then my mom, my friend, and I left in our separate cars. I knew I might have to give her the car because she needed it to get to work. I already have a bike, so that's okay. I'm still thinking about getting a truck, maybe a Ford F-150. My mom invited me to stay at her house. She said she could offer me support, but I expressed a need for some time alone to think and grieve. I assured her not to worry because I had my brothers to lean on. She agreed, but she asked me to commit to calling her every day to tell her how my day was going. When I got home, I broke down for the first time since this ordeal began. It was an agony that no words or phrases can adequately describe. That same day, all of my friends confronted their misbehaving wives, each with their own unique and painful story. All known betrayed spouses were also told, and we even emailed 2 other betrayed spouses whose families had moved out of the state. We sent them all relevant data. The next day, my friends and I got together, and there was a brief moment of silence. I couldn't control my tears any longer, and eventually I broke down and cried. We talked about what happened and how we dealt with D-Day and exposure. To my surprise, even though everyone's situation was different, their misbehaving wives offered excuses and tried to explain their behavior. Some even blamed each other for their misbehavior. However, my soon-to-be ex-wife has chosen to remain silent. After discussing our experiences, we decided to change the subject and distract ourselves with other things. We started talking about future plans and how we would rebuild our lives. This camaraderie and support gave us the strength to face the challenges ahead. It's been 2 days since then, and my soon-to-be ex-wife has been calling and emailing me, constantly apologizing, but I haven't responded. I have chosen to ignore them. It's been a very difficult 2 days. I've found it hard to breathe, and staying home feels like the walls are closing in on me. So I've been staying out and spending time with my friends. I'm even thinking about requesting an early deployment from my commanding officer. I just want to get out of here for a while, but I have to sign and file divorce papers first. Right now, the pain is unspeakable. I'm considering going on vacation with my friends for a little distraction. It's a little respite from this mess. Over the next few weeks, each of us began the long process of recovery. We supported each other and shared our feelings and experiences. Sometimes we would drink together and tell stories from the battlefield, trying to recapture that brotherhood we once had. Other times, we would sit quietly together, each lost in our own thoughts. I began seeking counseling to try to understand my emotions and learn how to cope with the pain of this betrayal. My therapist told me that anger and sadness were normal reactions, but that it was important not to let these emotions control my life. She encouraged me to focus on my own growth and healing instead of dwelling on my resentment toward my ex-wife. Over time, I began to rediscover the simple pleasures in life. I picked up some of my once favorite hobbies like reading and photography. I started running in my neighborhood park, which not only helped me stay fit, but also gave me time to think. My comrades are also looking for new directions in their respective lives. Some have decided to retire from the military and start new careers. Some chose to stay in the military but applied for new positions. We are all trying to redefine ourselves and stop being defined by the label betrayed husband. We also encountered some unexpected support during the process. Some of our colleagues and superiors were extremely understanding and supportive when they realized our situation. They adjusted our work schedule and gave us more time for personal matters. This support made us feel that we were not alone and that we were still part of a larger family. The divorce proceedings went smoother than I expected. My attorney proved that she was indeed an expert in the field, and she handled all of the complex legal issues so that I could focus on my recovery. In the end, my ex-wife and I reached a fair agreement, and we avoided a long court battle. During this difficult time, I also reassessed my values and life goals. I began to think about what was really important to me and what kind of person I wanted to be. I decided to become a better person and not let this experience make me bitter or apathetic. I began to get more involved in my community, especially organizations that support veterans. By helping others going through difficult times, I found new purpose and meaning. Not only did this help me heal myself, but it also made me feel like I could still make a positive contribution to the world. Over time, the pain slowly began to lessen. Sometimes I still feel sadness and anger, but these emotions are no longer as overwhelming as they once were. I learned to accept these emotions, but not let them define me. My comrades and I continue to stay in close contact. We meet regularly to share our progress and challenges. It gives me great comfort to see each of us slowly recovering and finding our way in life again. Now, 6 months have passed since the night that changed our lives. I stand in front of the mirror and see a stronger, more resilient version of myself. I know this experience will always be a part of my life, but it no longer defines me. I have learned to forgive, not for her, but for myself. I am ready for new challenges and a new chapter in my life. My comrades and I weathered the storm together. Our friendships were tested and became stronger than ever. We supported each other, encouraged each other, and came out of the low points of our lives together. Now, we are not just comrades in arms, but the closest friends in our lives. Each of us has found our own way to rebuild our lives. Some chose a new career, others rededicated themselves to their work, and still others found new love. But no matter how different our paths were, we all stayed close. This experience has taught me a lot. I learned to appreciate the things that really matter: friendships, family, and self-worth. I learned that nothing in life can be taken for granted and that we must work for our own happiness. Most importantly, I learned to remain hopeful in the face of adversity. No matter what challenges life throws at us, as long as we stick together and believe in ourselves, nothing can defeat us. Today, when I look back on this experience, I no longer feel pain and anger. Instead, I feel grateful. Grateful that this experience has allowed me to grow and become stronger. Grateful for those who have always supported me, especially my fellow soldiers. Our story is not over. In fact, it's just a new beginning. We are ready to take on life's next challenge, whatever it may be, because we know that as long as we stand together, nothing can break us. This is our story, a story of betrayal, friendship, and rebirth. It reminds us that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope and strength. We just need to face it with courage and trust that better days will eventually come. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.